Welcome to Founder Loveline, the show where we're humanizing the entrepreneurial experience. We're helping to bridge the gaps that interior markets have to access, and we're bringing best practices to founders from founders who have been there, done that. So super happy to be here with you, Nicole. This is Nicole Vasquez.
Hello, hello.
Prior co-founder of Deskpass, also the COO of Refresh Miami. Thrilled to be here in Miami. So this is our first time being live and bringing the show on the road. So
wow, I'm honored. Here. Well, thank you. Yeah. I would have flown to you to do it. Any excuse to get on a plane, you know me.
You're always welcome to Phoenix. We'd love to have you there. Amazing. So Nicole and I met maybe 3 years ago now. At one of Janine's dinners during her Brex days. So it was super amazing. Kind of just talk about the journey.
And hit it off like that.
Exactly. We were sitting next to each other. And yeah, I just have so much appreciation for what you've done.
Same.
Wanted to talk a little bit about your journey as an owner-operator at Deskpass and then transitioning into a more mission-driven role at Refresh and kind of what that journey was like for you.
Oh, wow. Where should I start? What would you... Is this one of those deep questions? Who am I? What do I stand for?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're making career shifts like that, there's usually like some catalyst in your life that's like, it would be interesting to take on a role like that. So just curious going from, co-founder of startup to a nonprofit and kind of what your journey was to embrace that.
It's interesting that you noticed that because I know I shared an update with you before we started recording that we'll get to share later on. Teaser alert.
Yes.
But it's funny that you brought up the transformational, and because there was this exercise I did in this book that I highly recommend, Find Your Clear Vision. And it said, ask the people closest to you, why are they your friend? But also write down all the things that people come to you advice for. And I noticed there was two very strong themes in my life of what people come to me advice for. One is how to build relationships, how to provide value, ultimately to get ahead in their career. Because they say, hey, you have a knack for building the right relationships. How do you know these people? How do you get in those rooms? And I always say it's by providing value, and I help them. And the other is making bold decisions in life. And for me, it's been career-wise because I am a 3-time entrepreneur. I recently took a role as COO of Refresh Miami after 10 plus years of running my own companies. And it was funny because when I announced that role, I had a lot of people reach out and say, that's awesome, congrats. I never thought you'd not be running your own company or being an entrepreneur, but yet it makes so much sense to see you in this role. And so I'm very proud of recognizing what it is that I want to be working on and what is the impact I want to have, and being okay with that. I used to say it's called like jumping from lily pad to lily pad, but only when that lily pad floats by and just makes sense and you feel called to jump to that lily pad. So yeah, and in a nutshell, I started and sold 2 co-working spaces in Chicago with online communities built in. My third company, you can consider it the Airbnb for co-working spaces. Cheesy to say, but easy to explain. And we built the largest network of on-demand bookable workspaces in the world by building the technology that allowed you to book that. We scaled it to 20 countries. And the company's doing very well. I have such love for my co-founders and my team. It's just that about 1.5 years ago, I hit a point where I said the company's doing extremely well. I was co-founder, chief people officer, and I just wanted to be more involved here in Miami. And so I let my co-founders know, I love you guys, but I want to do the next thing. And my team said, we love you, and we're so happy for you. And I took over as COO of Refresh Miami, the oldest and largest organization of technology professionals here in Miami. It's also a news organization that reports on tech and startup news. So that's where I am right now. And then I am writing my book. So I'm writing a book called Momentum by Design, which I know we'll get into. So right now, that's where I sit.
Oh, lovely, Nicole. There's so many things I want to extract out of what you said. One of which is around have your friends tell you what they love about working with you or talking with you, right? And it's so difficult for us sometimes to talk about ourselves in that way.
It was weird to send that text.
Exactly, right. I've also heard of like other tactical stuff, like forming your personal board of directors, like people you can go to kind of bounce them. I love that group was able to help you distill down kind of what that next step was for you. So amazing. Thank you for sharing.
And a little bit of ChatGPT and a little bit of a book and some personality quizzes, but
the infusion
I'm happy to share that process with anyone who wants to know.
It's amazing. So I hear that you have some news that you'd like to share.
Yes.
Can you tell us?
Thanks. And thank you for being so excited about it. As you know, so once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. After a year and a half of working with Refresh Miami and having this incredible experience that has led me to meet so many great founders and be involved in so many regional initiatives here, I am moving on from Refresh at the end of next month. So, well, at the end of April 2024, I'll say. So giving plenty of time so we can really focus on the long-term roadmap before I leave, so that I can start my fourth company. It will be my agency called Momentum by Design, based on the framework in my book, which helps people to map out their path to impact. And what that means is through a 4-part framework, mapping out the ecosystem, putting together a system in place of how to network and build relationships. I use the word network because people know the word network, but I think networking is BS. It's relationship building. So mapping out who are putting together a strategy of how you're going to go about your path to impact, mapping out your ecosystem, meaning who are the key stakeholders in that arena, whether it's, you're working in government or you're working as an entrepreneur or you are in advocacy, or in business, and you just need to meet the right people, mapping out what that looks like and putting a plan of how to go about that, and working with them on communication and cause alignment. So making sure that people understand what you're doing and why, and can rally the right people around you. I've spent 10 plus years as a community builder, so helping people build communities ultimately to achieve something of positive impact. And then even after that, because when somebody builds a community, there's a lot of work to continue to be done, and identifying if that person or organization should still be that head of the community, or should they partner, or how do you pass the torch so that your work actually lives on? Because as anybody who has sold a company understands, or who has sold a community or who has built something and moved on, it's hard to keep that momentum going.
Yes.
And these things that we build are like our children, and we want the best for them.
Right.
And especially if you want to do something that has a long-term impact, it's just as important the way that you pass that torch as it is as the initial steps of building it. So it will be a one-to-one consulting agency as well as a one-to-many. So I'll work with individuals, I'll work with organizations, and I'll work with individuals online around the world through various courseworks and things like that. So stay tuned, but definitely the book will be the foundation of all of it.
Incredible. Congratulations on taking such another bold move again for your fourth venture. That's just incredible. And it feels like you've really compiled all of the workings that you've done into this beautiful framework that I think is going to be so impactful.
I hope it was all worth something.
Of course.
All of this up here, I want to just
get that download, right? And I think until we spend that time, like, what is the ethos of what I'm doing here? Like, what is my purpose? What is my 1% unique trait? So, like, you've clearly gone through those steps and those cycles to be able to get there. So, super excited for you in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for your excitement.
Of course. So let's talk a little bit about your time at Refresh Miami and some of the milestones that were hit there, from the tech talent side, from the jobs creation, from the vibrancy infused. And I think similar to your mission of wanting to help emerging communities and community leaders, if you can also talk about some of those, best practices that you felt like really worked. But I think there's, so much to be done in that arena of just like amplifying the opportunities in a way and welcoming new community members into a tech hub. So love to hear more about the milestones.
So many great questions. Thank you. And we'll try to encompass it with my response. The first thing to say is Refresh Miami has been around for a very long time, since 2006. And it's one of those organizations that has been doing such great work, and everybody was part-time. And so I knew the woman, Maria Dershi, who has been running Refresh part-time for many years. And I was running my own company, running Deskpass, remote, living in Miami, but really feeling called to being more involved in what was happening here in Miami. I was very involved in Chicago in the tech and startup ecosystem. And it was very serendipitous where I was chatting with her and she was catching me up on, Refresh is just always doing great things, but we feel kind of pulled every which way. And we just want to continue to grow. And I let her know that I was, open to potentially doing something different, and it just happened. And the reason I share that is because when I came on board, what I did is I spent the first 6 weeks interviewing. I knew that even though I loved Refresh and had followed all their resources, the number one thing to do is to see what it was already doing well, what people thought of it for, where it provide value, and what does the ecosystem need. I'm very focused on long-term mission and working backwards from there. For example, you said something to me this right before we started recording, which was about your mission for making Phoenix the
accessible large market ecosystem.
The most accessible large market ecosystem. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
It made me so happy to hear that crystal clear vision. Instead of, you can easily just say, well, I want to build up the tech ecosystem, which is an admirable thing to do. You have this long-term vision. And Refresh has this vision of growing the tech and startup ecosystem equitably. And that was really appealing to me. And so came on board. I asked, who are the main key players here? And I also interviewed our members at the time. And I just collected for 6 weeks all this information, because even though I'm an expert at business strategy, that's one of my superpowers, that strategy doesn't come without understanding what is the need, right? Because you want to, just like being an entrepreneur, you don't want to operate in a vacuum, because even though sometimes you just want to work all day long and not talk to anyone so you can get work done, once you go and you start talking to someone, you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. You get better information. So ultimately, I spent the first 6 weeks, learning and surveying everybody, and then getting pulled and getting involved in all the initiatives. Refresh does a lot of events. It's part of a large regional initiative that aims to solve the tech talent pipeline here. So that's kind of that in a nutshell of why, in terms of a lot of the things that we do, I'll speak to the tech talent. So actually, I'll take a step back. Refresh is the aggregator and distributor of information here in Miami. So our tagline is, this is where Miami tech happens. Previously, it was the hub of Miami tech. And so it's where everybody goes to get information, because we have around 10 news articles a week that our journalists write. We have all these free resources. So if anybody goes to our website and goes to our resources page, you'll see all of these free things we do for the community, like a job board, all of these meetups, all of these resources like these directories, investor directory. And then of course, our big announcement that we made last year was the Miami Tech Dashboard, which is a huge dashboard of data similar to Crunchbase and PitchBook, but it's free. And it's all about the Miami and South Florida ecosystem, so people can see what companies are here, how much money they've raised, what investors are here, who are they investing in, how industries perform over time. And we did that because it was in line with our mission of being the aggregator and distributor of information, and knowing that the power of information and what it can do for founders and investors, and how it can build the ecosystem. So ultimately, Refresh does a lot of things, but the challenge was, over the past year and a half, was to make sure that the things that they were doing before I came on board continued to make sense, and we tested that out. And then we tried some new things based on the business strategy that we, put together. But always saying, what is our role in the ecosystem? What are we trying to accomplish? And how can we do that without trying to recreate? Because there's so many organizations here that are doing accelerators and incubators and are putting together all these reports and things like that. So it's like, what can we do? What can we do that matches the pillars, our fundamental pillars, but also serves to grow the ecosystem?
Incredible. Yeah, I have so much respect for Refresh Miami and the longevity and the success they've had. And I think they, sort of serve as like a poster child for ecosystems all over the world. I just think there's so much to learn there. And it's interesting kind of looking at that model, and it's what, 18-ish years old?
Yeah, 2006. So
Yeah,
exactly.
So we won't do the math. Somewhere around that, right? But I think,
no,
you know,
2022. No, 18, you're right.
yeah, exactly,
Can
right?
we edit
So
that
it's
out?
like, imagine starting an initiative like that now with the availability of tools that we have.
Yep.
Right. And how you can maybe hit some of those milestones sooner, faster, in a different way. So it's going to be really interesting to see the emerging of, the amplifiers, the aggregators, kind of the distribution for tech hubs. But what an incredible experience for you to be there and kind of be involved in the refresh of the Refresh Miami.
And
right?
with information, we all know that right now there's all this talk of with media, and there's the rise of the influencers and bloggers, which, I respect for anybody who's writing about things that they love, right? I do the same. But ultimately, when it comes to news, what I love is that our head writer, Nancy Dahlberg, is a legend in Miami.
Incredible.
She was at the Miami Herald for many years. Our team of journalists are journalists.
Yeah. This is what they do.
That is what they do. And, we have founders, companies all the time emailing us saying, can you cover us? We operate with corporate partnerships. We are very clear with our corporate partners that this is not buying a news article, because news should not, at its principle, should not be pay to play, right? Otherwise, it's not, it has to be newsworthy. And so what I love is that this organization is built upon a real newsroom.
Yeah.
With very talented journalists.
Before I moved to Miami, that was my source. It's like I was able to understand a lay of the land before I even got here. And I think the more that we can help new members integrate into their communities faster, the faster they'll be happier and more productive, right? So I just think there's so much that gets tied into that.
Yeah.
And they've done a tremendous job in the market.
Knowledge is power. I mean, it's one of those posters that were on the wall in school when we were kids. But right. I mean, you know how it is. People want to thrive. They just need the information and resources.
Yeah, to run with it. So amazing. One thing you said was around networking, right? So I think there's, maybe a difference in like value systems that people have around, okay, I'm in a room with influential people. Like, what do I do with this experience? And it, I think oftentimes it can be this like transactional type of thing of like, oh, this person's here. They're a target on my list. I'm ready to pitch them right now.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like that first impression can not be received very well to someone who values relationships more than transactional networking.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that there's not more content around this, and like, I feel like it's a bit taboo of like people's social meter and how much they're actually engaging in their community versus building. And I think there's a lot of hot topics around it. But what would you say for those that, okay, listen, if you've been transactional in the past, like that's okay, but making that transition to more of the relationship building, and then also tying in kind of the difference of personalities. You have more introverted individuals, extroverted, right? And finding that balance. But I think we share this very much so in the importance of relationship building. And at the end of the day, it's like basically everything.
Yeah.
So how do you see that transitioning happening?
The number one thing I say, I mean, if I could just boil it down, it's to provide value. And what does that mean? How do you provide value to someone? Well, there's different types of value. Are you providing them an actual resource or a suggestion, some sort of tangible thing that they can get education from or an opportunity from? Something? It's like giving a gift of something. A value can also be in your presence and just being a nice human. So for example, yes, we all have our list of people we love to connect with. And maybe you're at an event and you see this person, him or her, and it's like, holy cow, that's like the person that I would love to invest in my company, or whoa, that is my target client, or just somebody I really admire. Well, think about it. If you go up to them and you go, hey, so-and-so, and start blurting out your pitch, one, it's uncomfortable, but two, this person now feels like they only exist to serve you, and also, like, to be honest, they don't know you. Like, why? Like, why would somebody give something to you? And so, But it's funny because we think of it as like, this is I'm going to shoot my shot, right? But the thing is I found that when I've seen those people, my very first it's the first of many conversations if you do it right. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. It's, for example, I go to a lot of conferences where I meet a lot of, globally recognized people. And an easiest thing, if you're very nervous, is just to go up to them and compliment them on something that they said during the conference or something they did recently in the news, because it, one, shows that that you know something about them. And so at its core, you're just providing value. And then resist the urge to be like, great, can I send you my pitch afterwards? But at least their guard will be down. And if they have the time, they might say, oh, thanks, what did you like about it? And then you talk about it. The thing that you can't fake is actual interest in their work. Because let's say they want to keep talking about that topic. What are you going to do? You know? And so I think being true, like I have my list of people that I really admire in this world, but it's because they do work that I really care about. And that if they were open to talking with me about it for more than 20 minutes, I can hold my own on it. So I think being authentic and things like that, but I'll leave it with this because I have so many more tips, is play the game of asking questions until people finally say, well, enough about me, tell me about you. So I do this every time I meet people. I just keep asking questions, not probing questions, but like a,
level of curiosity.
Oh, tell me more about that. How did you build that? What are your challenges right now? What do you do outside of work? Until find someone, and you'll notice people get more and more engaged. But that's how to have a good conversation. Because maybe I should tie it all together by explaining, I'd rather have 3-minute conversation with someone that I ask all the questions, and at the very end, they have 30 seconds to say, oh, enough about me, how about you? Because they're so excited. And then they'll say, well, let's connect because they had a great conversation, versus it being 2 minutes about me and 1 minute about them. Because then when it's done, they're like, okay, great to meet you. Like, I just learned your whole life story.
Yeah, there's nothing to follow up on.
Exactly. And it's also like, I just word vomited everything about myself and nothing about them. So I will always rather, and also a lot of times people run out of time, like, oh, I can't. And I'll say, it was great talking to you. They're like, yeah, send me a message, follow up. But guess what? Now you're that person that followed up, and they're like, oh, this person was so nice. They asked me so many things about myself. I'll respond to this email.
That is wisdom right there, Nicole. Thank you. I love that so much. I think it's such a positive reframe of just like, yes, there's these burning things inside of us that we want to share. And as visionaries, like, you want to talk about that thing. But at the end of the day, we're humans. And finding that authentic connection, that genuine way to truly care about someone and who they are and what they've done before you're onto your own agenda is massive. So thanks for breaking that down. And I feel like sometimes I think you're the type of person that comes naturally, right? And then there's others who are like, I literally don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're building out this agency just makes so much sense of like tactically breaking it down for people that need a little bit more support on how to do it.
Thank you for sharing that. To be honest, for many years, I hated people were like, you're such a good networker. You have such a good network. You're such a connector. And I always felt so cheesy because I also was that kid that was like the A+ student. And I want to just like be known for these deep intellectual things. And yet people were like, you're a really good networker. And I felt embarrassed. I was like, well, that's cheesy. Like, what does that mean about me? Is that, and you know what I realized is no, finally at a point in my life where I said, that has gotten me a long way. It's taken me far because it's been able to build relationships with really incredible people. And at its core of my agency, I want to teach the power of having transformative relationships. And by transformative, I mean the power of relationships that allow you to get to the next level. Because I believe providing value is the key to building relationships, which is the key to getting ahead in life, and ultimately allows people to feel proud and purposeful. And I think that's what we're all aiming for, and that's what I want. And I've done that myself through relationship building. And so I'm not going to be embarrassed, and I'm going to teach people, and not teach, I want to help guide people to find how to do that in their own way.
Yeah, so incredibly valuable, especially for those who are trying to break into this industry and not really sure how to kind of be in the room. So amazing. So tell me, Momentum by Design, is the book going to be structured in a way where it's like workbook style, where it's engaging on that level, or is it more, kind of telling the story? Like, expand upon it. I'm super curious.
Thanks. So there's two parts. I already started writing some of the articles and giving teaser insights, and you can see it on my website and on my LinkedIn. I have a newsletter. But ultimately, what it is the foundation of the book is my 4-part framework that it shows people how to map ecosystems, build communities around a cause, and ultimately have a path to impact. But it's a 4-part framework. And so I sat down and went through everything in my experiences. I wrote it all down, created a framework. But what I'm doing is I'm testing it out and I'm evolving it through 2 things: research and through interviews with influential leaders and global change makers. So I have a 4-part framework now. Who knows? Maybe that'll be a 5-part framework by the time the book is published. But what I'm doing is taking my expertise, validating it through research or evolving it or updating it, but also inputting real world case studies. So for example, I've already interviewed a Fortune 100 CEO, Richard Gonzalez of AbbVie. I've interviewed General David Petraeus, the former director of the CIA. I've interviewed Princess Rima, the U.S. Saudi ambassador, also Saudi royalty, a huge advocate for women's rights, for multiple advocacy. Now she's working on ocean restoration. Gitanjali Rao, an 18-year-old who has been on the cover of Time, was recently at the White House. She was named Time's Innovator of the Year or Kid of the Year. I think it was it's just really Forbes 30 under 30. They didn't even have a Forbes 20 under 20, so she had to go to the 30 under 30 at 18 or even 17. Christian Krom, a leading technologist, keynote speaker on AI and trend watching. And the reason I bring up these big names is not to be a name dropper, because gosh, that's so annoying. Sorry, I should have mentioned this, is these people know how to build momentum. They have gotten far in their careers. And what I want to do is extract their strategies and say, how did you actually build momentum? Because you can give tips on what you can study, all of the things, like how did you get to where you are? And people will say, well, I attribute it to my parents and good education, which is all very true. But building momentum means you make waves. People know what you're doing. They feel positively towards it. They introduce you to people. They keep you top of mind for speaking opportunities. There's, as an entrepreneur, once you start speaking on podcasts or, in events and things like that, people ask you to keep doing it. It's building momentum. And what happens? Then people think of you as the person who does this, and they call upon you when they need that service. So there's a real thing about building momentum, but how do these people who have built so much momentum that they got to the top of their field, how do they actually do that? And so I'm extracting their tactics, and I'm comparing it to my framework and working it in there. And so the book will be guidance through this framework that is easily adaptable, but also with real world case studies to validate it.
Smart.
And who doesn't love to hear behind the scenes of all these big names?
And backing it up with evidence that way. I mean, I think there's so much to be said with how we're helping people, but backing it up with the real world aspect of it. So I can't wait to read it.
Yeah. I'm excited to know. I'm learning as I go too. So although yes, I can't wait to publish. That'll be exciting. The research is the journey, because I'm learning and evolving as well, and I'm learning so many tidbits that I can share.
Yeah,
there's so many interesting things that researchers have studied.
Sure. No, I love that it's still a continuous evolution, like as you're building it. Do you have an estimated time frame for?
I'd love to say within a year. So I would say at some point in 2025 would be great.
Incredible. Can't wait for the pre-order.
Thanks. Thank you. Come to the launch party. You'll be on the list.
Amazing. Would love to. Cool. The last topic I'd love to talk about is your experience operating as a female founder, as a new mother. How old is Coast now?
Oh my goodness, 21 months.
Oh my gosh. Such a cutie.
Yeah.
Such a cutie.
Thanks.
So it's just
hard.
It's really
the
hard.
Best time in life. Isn't it ironic? It's such a paradox that the absolute best time of your life is also the hardest.
Yes. Yes. Right. We need the polarity of that spectrum, the light and the dark, and all the things, the joy and the fear, and all the things to be able to really have this holistic experience. And I get passionate about female founders, and still we're slowly moving the needle on venture capital and having more women who are writing checks, not only receiving the money,
Yes.
but writing checks, right? All of it. And then as we're kind of operating in our day to day, sitting in the boardroom, sitting in meetings where, we might be the only female in the room.
Yeah.
So just curious your experience throughout the years and how you've navigated it, and if you have any other tips for emerging female founders who are in those positions.
The most important is that women need to be in positions of power. By the time my son is navigating a career, I hope that it is not uncommon that every room is 50-50 or around that. That it's not that we're no longer the only females or in the room. Because what happens is when women are in positions of power, they make decisions that are representative of women's needs, but also women see that, and it doesn't seem so far away. And the reason I say that we need to actually focus on that is because there's all these studies now that show when a couple has a child, it more often than not is the woman that either that takes a backseat to her career or eventually drops out of the career race, at least temporarily or forever, which just adds more challenge to us. So I would say at this point in my career, I always choose to want to elevate women, even if that means that they need a little bit extra guidance, and that's okay. So I think mentorship is a big thing. I have multiple calls throughout the week, one-to-one calls, just to help people along their journey. But I think the biggest thing for me has been, I've always been that person that was like in the room with people. I was the least qualified, and that helped me in my career. So I would say number one is just put yourself in uncomfortable positions. Look for women that you align with, that you see as mentors. It doesn't have to be a formal mentorship, but align yourself with them. Go up to them and say, "Hey, I love the work that you do. Would you be open?" You have to be careful how you phrase it. Never say that, "Can I pick your brain?" But you can say "I love the work that you do. I really enjoy this piece that you did. I'm working on this. Would you like to speak to my community," or something like that, where you're offering something of value, or can I learn from your work? Can I take you to coffee or something if your schedule allows? Can we do a Zoom call that's not taxing on your schedule? But start to align yourself with other incredible female leaders. But yeah, I think I have so many things that I want to say about women.
Right. The more that we can elevate each other.
So much, yeah.
I often look at mentorship in a linear way where, you're saying you're in a room and felt like you were the most underqualified person. Maybe in that room, but in a larger ecosystem of women who were not where you were, right? How do we pick up and help the ones that are trailing behind, but then also allowing us to mentor with women who are further along, closer on the track that we want to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's I think that continuous level of mentorship, and again, placing ourselves in more of a place of power, of knowing no, I do, even though I'm early on in my career, I've done XYZ, and here's how I can help bring those other women.
That's beautifully said. I love how you said that it's not linear.
Yeah.
And ultimately, certain phrases like, "How can I help?" And following up. I think you're great at this. Every time we talk, you always have great notes and you follow up. And it's that's such a simple thing. I have these one-to-one calls and I just always say, "How can I help? How can I support you?" And a lot of times they're like, "Oh, I don't even know." But sometimes people will get back to me and say, "Hey, thank you for asking. Here are some things I'm looking." And I take the 5-10 minutes to think of, can I connect them to someone? Is there a resource? My favorite thing is providing resources because I'm a learner. I like to collect information in my head. And so, direct it. People want to, they don't expect you to handhold them through everything. But if you can suggest even a great book or a podcast, to say, "Look, it seems like something that could be aligned with you." Maybe, maybe they find value in it now. And there's sometimes people have said, "You told me this a year ago and I wrote it down and I just remembered it and it was helpful." So
those little tidbits of inspiration, right, are really meaningful. And I feel like we've had this informal mentorship, you and I, and I just so appreciate your support.
We've been so helpful of each other.
Yeah, it's been incredible. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. So much wisdom packed into this episode. And
We can talk for
much
hours,
more.
obviously.
Yeah, I think we can. And I'd love to talk with you again once the book is released and see what some of those findings were. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing all the knowledge. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this to inspire people to share. Well, I always hope that sharing my story will just be helpful to others. And if not, or at least spark an idea or a conversation. And if anybody has questions, I'm always open to talking.
Thank you. Thank you for being accessible.
Thank you.
All right.
Yay.